Advantage Athletic Therapy, personalized rehabilitation programs with a whole body approach. Enjoy the podcast.
Well, look who it is. Lori's back from an unplugged vacation. Good to see you. How are you? How was the holiday?
Holiday was beautiful. Lovely to be away. Nice to be back.
We are talking about a word that off air, when you sent me this and I started going through it in my mind, it was way bigger than I thought. This damn one word, right? That I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And this is where we're going to start with this, because I really think most people don't understand. And it's a simple word that I heard as a kid. You probably heard it as a kid. And the word is shame. And man, that word can do a lot of damage. But I think when I was young, I told you this off air, I would always hear, have you no shame? And I really had no clue what they were talking about. I'm like, well, I'm fine. I don't know about you, but we really need to get into this, because I really want to start just right there. This is the book that you're going to lead us to, but talk about what is shame. I don't understand.
Well, we started this conversation, and folks, we've been off air already like 15 minutes, just like talking about it. So welcome to the conversation. But we really delineated that guilt is the doing of an action that makes us feel guilty. But shame is about being. It's about who I am. It's I'm not enough. I'm not successful enough. I don't make enough money. I'm not a good parent. Or for kids, I'm not a good enough goalie. I didn't get 99 on my math test. So shame is more internalized. Shame is where we start to hide that feeling. We don't want to talk about that feeling. We isolate from other people. It's really where we feel like we don't fit in and we're not enough. And in my work, Dave, this comes up all the time. I'm not enough.
Shame, as when you put it in those terms too, and when you're a kid, boy, basically you're wrapped in shame then. Like you really don't know who you are. If you're always dealing with shame, correct?
Well, and sometimes the folks in our lives are not as gentle. And I mean, we've come from generations where they didn't know they needed to be gentle. So,
Right.
I did share with you vulnerably. When I was 16, one of my brothers said, Lori, you are book smart and street stupid. That was 41 years ago. And still, it's on my mind. It's an ingrained thing in my mind that families sometimes, or their teachers or people in our lives, don't necessarily know when they say things like, you're never going to be good enough. You're never going to succeed. You're not as good as your brother. Oh, well, you dance well. There's these things and inferences of things that we've been told. And the book that I'm going to bring up has an entire chapter about this. And when we look at the word familiar, it has family and lies right in the same word, when there's a whole chapter about this. So what did we learn as kids? What were we told as kids? What did we imprint as kids? And what do we still carry 20, 30, and 40 years later?
So what, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but what would you say, or how would you approach a young teenager who's maybe not putting the full effort in? How would you don't want to shame them into it, but as a parent, what would you recommend they say then? Like, how do you approach this? And I'm guilty. I've used that on my kids. I've used shame once in a while, and for sure, just to get their attention to say, no, you're not listening. But what would be the right way?
Well, and that's a difficult topic. We talked about that off air as well, right? So as parents, we all do the best we can to encourage, motivate, and assist our kids. And we talked about the fact that even your kids, right, are very confident and able and know who they are. But some families and some teachers and the way some kids are raised, they really don't have a good sense of who I am, what motivates me, what I like, and what I'm good at. So your first question was, as parents, what should we do? Find what your children are good at, feed that.
Yes.
Find it
Grow
and feed it, right? I mean, I had one son who I probably shouldn't say on air, but I mean, I was buying him alcohol underage so he could cook with it. He made the best salmon with alcohol, and I can't do it. And now when I say, hey, how'd you do that? He's like, Mom, it's got too much sugar. You can't have it. But as a kid, He was cooking and creating, and that was his passion. And that literally was his job for many, many years. Find your child's passion, feed into the passion. My other son, it was about humor. He was the life of the party. And so that was really who he was. And find what your children, grandchildren, the people in your lives like, what motivates them, feed into it, be part of it, encourage them, help them to discover who they are and what that means.
So this book's called Informed Therapy.
Yes.
And you said it goes deep in many different directions. So maybe a little bit of an overview, and then we can pick areas that we want to talk about.
Absolutely. So it is called Shame Informed Therapy. It is meant for therapists, but I've read it, looked through it. This is a great book for anybody. There are chapters around family. There's chapters around polyvagal. We've talked about polyvagal
Yes.
so much. There are chapters around emotional regulation. But what I love and why I really wanted to talk about this book was because you could pick it up, take it on vacation, read one section, and then there are reflective pages. You can actually put this in pen, put this in writing. You could take this book with you, and every chapter you read could really be a healing step for yourself. So really, this not enoughness, this is I'm never going to be good enough, I'm not enough. This comes up in my practice all the time. I do a lot of trauma work, and this is generally 90% of the time a root or core piece. So the very fact that the title says shame, if you can get past that, the work around this is around who am I? I am enough. What are my values? How can I build on those? And then how can I build these strategies so I can cope better and live the fulfilled life I want to?
When you said that too, all right, let's step back. I'm going to get caught on this. I know it, because you said I think there's different eras that had different expectations. So I'm wondering if this is that crossover that's caused all this problem, because I think there were probably expectations from my great grandfather on my father, you know what I mean? And so on down the chain. There was always that expectation, but then there wasn't the allowance to be who you were back then. I'm wondering that. And now when you step it forward and you see today's society, kids are maybe more self-aware of their own goals or who they are, or maybe not, I don't know for sure. But I mean, there seems to be this shift, right, as it comes through. It Boy, I think I'm kind of concerned about that, because I do think I do have some respect for my grandfather. My great grandfather would put expectations on me. He wasn't shaming me. He was telling me, you can do this. You just need to focus. You need to, this is how you do it. And example would be cutting his lawn, doing it the right way. You know what I mean? Like there was things like that. And I thought that taught you a little bit of discipline, and you wanted to live up to that expectation for him. I don't think that's a bad thing sometimes. Do you want to counterpoint me on that?
Not counterpoint, but what society has now shifted to is this perfectionism and be all you can
Oh,
be. So every minute of our days are programmed and planned. And so sometimes what we're seeing, even as adults, it's not just children,
oh.
but even as adults, I have to plan my day and program my day. And if I'm busy and if I'm showing and achieving and doing all these things, then I'm keeping up with other people.
Okay, that I buy that, because I think too, when you just said that, the other thing is the expectations that maybe my great grandfather put on me weren't about life in general, weren't
That's
about
right.
being the best damn grass cutter in the world. It was more like making sure you do it properly. You know what I mean? So the focus was more on doing it right, so that you always did it right, not that you were going to be the best at this forever. Not that that was the
Yeah.
goal. So maybe there's that leeway in there with that expectation versus commitment. I
Mhm.
don't know.
And commitment versus perfection. Because
Right.
that's another thing society is
Yes,
saying, is that you
people.
got to be perfect,
Wow.
and the perfection piece. And we could do a whole nother show on perfectionism, but there is a chapter in this book that talks
Well,
about
I'll
that.
just talk about it because I know it pretty good. Quit laughing.
So it's more this perfectionism that I'm being judged. And if I'm not perfect, then I'm not enough. That's where this piece of I'm not enough. I'm not. So if we think of kids in school, I got 97, but she got 99. I'm not enough. And that's just one example. But in all kinds of areas, sometimes what society is expecting is that we push and that our value of who we are is based on what we achieve. That's where this not enoughness comes from.
Wow. And okay, and my last counterpoint on that one too is then this is gonna sound old school, and you're probably gonna not like it, but do we just not have enough backbone to be who we need to be anymore? Like I think back then, we've talked about this in the past. If you were a
Mhm.
kid back then and you went and played with your buddies, half the time your parents didn't know who you were. You were doing things that maybe you shouldn't have, or you were, you know, going and doing things that were fun for you.
Mhm.
But you kind of learned to be independent and know who you were on your own a bit more. And maybe today's society is looking, no, the pedestal's here. You need to achieve that. Where back then, maybe we were more, oh, this is fun. I like doing this. I'm going to do this again tomorrow.
Mhm.
I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but I'm
Mhm.
kind of wondering if there's this, are we parenting too much then? Like
Mhm.
you understand where I'm at on this, right? Because I think shame, boy, it's back to that square one. I really don't
Mhm.
understand it because I'm like, okay, I think these aspects would help a child grow to be independent
Mhm.
and maybe not try and live to a standard that they know they don't want to live to.
Mhm. You're right. There's about 3 things all tied up in there. So
Yeah.
good thoughts.
Sorry.
I get that. And like you said before we came on air, we might have to talk about this more than once. So absolutely, we might talk about this more than once and do it from different angles. But there's a huge disparity in the way people are even parenting now. Some
Right.
kids do know exactly who they are, and parents are giving them choice and voice and ability to do all these things. Absolutely. But then the piece that becomes a adjusted piece is if any of us have to do things because people expect us to, and then judge us whether we do it well enough or not. So the reality in that is your grass cutting idea, right? Sending someone out with a lawnmower nowadays just cut the grass versus the way your grandpa expected that it was perfect and exact. And believe me, my grandma expected the same thing from me too. So I
Right.
get it. We've changed as a society. We've made good changes, we've made some bad changes, but the bottom line is, does someone have a sense of who I am and that I'm doing what I want to do and I'm doing it at the level that I need to do it and that I'm achieving in a way I want to achieve? So
I
there's
gotcha.
probably 3 or 4 different conversations in there. But the reality of when there's force for someone to be perfect or force for someone to do something the way someone else expects them to do it, then that's where years later they might come to a therapist and be talking about, I always felt like I wasn't good enough. And now what I'm bringing to my current relationships is that I feel like I'm not good enough. And if
Okay.
that's what's happening for someone, or if that's what's happening for a teenager right now, if that's what's happening, reach out to a therapist. Start to have some of these conversations because I bet you are enough. We just find the motivation, help you with that, build some confidence, build some language around that so that you can be exactly who you want to be or the version of yourself that is your best version of you.
Is the shame informed therapy, is it for the shamer or the shamee, or is it
I
for
don't think it
both?
matters. I think this
Okay.
book has so many good chapters. The chapter on polyvagal explains it so well, and then there's these reflection pages about it. There are so many pieces in this book that are fabulous that this book could be for anyone.
Okay.
And your question there, though, is more about what if I've done something to someone that's put them in a
Right.
position of shame?
Right.
What do I do? It can help you see things from a different perspective. But even parents or grandparents that didn't do a good job, we did it with the best of our ability, with the best of
Right.
our intention. And really, then it's us being transparent and honest and letting those around us know.
Well, it shows that you can still grow.
Yes.
Like, if you're willing to look at the book,
Yeah.
obviously, you're like, "I wasn't perfect. I
Yeah.
made mistakes, but let's find a way to make sure it's better as we go along." One of the ones that they talked about in this book that you mentioned was finding regulation with emotions,
Yeah.
and you mentioned, music, animals, and nature,
Yes.
which is kinda where we always go, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I smile every time I come across something like that because I know I'm going to bring it back to our next podcast. So there are 18 pages of reflection about music and dance and art, creativity, and being outside and animals, all of those things. So that 18 pages in this book absolutely made me smile because I knew I was going to bring it back to this podcast.
Are they using that as solutions, or are they using that as examples? Like, what's Can you give me a little bit of insight in that?
It's identifying that, for some people, being in nature is so helpful and how you can ground and what you can do, and then reflection pages around what that looks like. So, absolutely, there's 18 pages of really good reflective activities
And
just
when you
around that.
just around those subjects, yeah. And when you read it, was there a lot of light? I mean, this is what you practice. Was there a lot of light bulb moments for you? Like, I'm
Oh,
just curious.
absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And the ease with which each chapter is written, because it's just instead of reading Gabor Mate and van der Kolk around polyvagal and kind of what that means,
Okay.
left brain, right brain, instead of reading that, one chapter did that in a very good way. And then there's reflective pages for people to take a look at that and what it means for them.
Yeah. When you say reflective pages, I'm
Mhm.
not sure. Does that mean, is it a working page? Is it
Yes.
something where you can sort of draw on your own experiences that you write down?
Absolutely. I'd say half of this book are working pages. And what I'd recommend and why I thought about this is if you're going on a vacation where you're going to have some of that reflective time, this would be a great book to take and just do one little piece and then another time do another piece. I mean, every summer I think about books that could slide in your suitcase and go with you. And this, if you're in a healing place and if you want to look at some of these things, this is an excellent book. And half of it is reflective pages that you would write in that
Yeah.
book. And really, every chapter is one step in the right direction towards healing.
And in the end, what did you gain from it? Like personally, like what did you
Mhm.
see was there an outcome that you didn't recognize that you went, oh,
Mhm. Well, the polyvagal chapter for sure, but this
yeah,
chapter about our families as well, and just
oh,
the
yeah,
way they broke that down. There are 3 or 4 pages that just say, and it's a checkoff page, right? Was this said? Did you feel this? How did you feel? And so it really helps you to look at what was your childhood really like, and there are things you may not have thought about. So that chapter was instrumental for me.
oh wow. And I think that's to me that yeah, that would be interesting. That'd be
Mhm,
interesting because
mhm.
I'm not sure I want to go there, but
I know.
but if you're sort of doing it for yourself with yourself, if that makes sense, so you can sort of take it at your own pace
Mhm,
and understand it. When you're reading that, like when you're doing your research and all that, and you have things in your life that are happening. I've had things in mine, but does that make it harder, or does this
mhm.
book make it easier to under?
Makes
It
it
makes it easier to okay, to
It
understand
makes
it,
it easier. It's almost
but
like putting on a different lens, a different set of glasses, seeing
okay,
something from a different perspective and going, "Oh," and then really sitting with it, and then really having that introspective, reflective piece, because that is who we were and how we got here. But who
right.
do we wanna be?
And my last question on this is, where do you have to be with yourself in order to start reading this book?
Mhm.
Because there's got to be you got to have a somewhat of a sense of who you are first before you read this, don't you?
Mhm. Some people do, but I would say no. I would say there's
Oh,
pieces
wow.
that any of us could read. And honestly, Dave, I'm going to be transparent. I'll be sitting with a client and we'll have a conversation, and a client will say, "Hey, that's what Chat GPT told me."
Oh,
So
there's
I
another
know
subject.
I know that clients are using AI to try and solve some of these personal things they're feeling, which is why when I argued with myself about this book, I landed on share the title. I would far rather a client have the book, read the piece on polyvagal, then really do those reflective pages on polyvagal rather than asking AI, "Hey, when my body does this, what does it mean?" I'd really prefer that clients have this resource. And that's why I know it's a book for therapists, but I see that it is a valuable book for clients.
I think the one thing I would tell people with AI to be aware of, if you use it enough, it knows who you are and it'll tell you what you want to hear. That's
That's
my opinion.
that's
But
another podcast. So
yeah, yeah, that's another
wasn't that
podcast.
Hammy Hamster? That is another story.
Yeah, down by the riverbank, wasn't it? I
Yes,
think so. Great topic today. 20 minutes just blown up just like that. And we only talked about shame, which is good in the book. Um, I think, again, I'm probably going to revisit this down the road with you because there's so many pieces that I kind of, I was, like I said at the start of the show, it's like, just how that word was used in the pretense 50 years ago on you. Right. So I think that's changed dramatically. Thanks for doing this. Great talking to you about this subject. It's something I think we need to dive into a little deeper. Take care.
Take care.